But is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, this ain't just some psychology textbook title. Nah, this is the question that's secretly driving your life right now. You ever ask yourself why you keep going or why you keep stopping? That quiet frustration when you're grinding at a job that doesn't light you up. That guilt when you know you should be chasing your dreams, but you're stuck chasing someone else's expectations. That's what this is about. That invisible tug of war between what the world wants from you and what your soul's been screaming for since you were a kid. Look, I've been on both sides. I've had the mansion, the fame, the big contracts, all that, and still felt empty some nights. I've also had moments where I was broke, unknown, but so locked into my purpose that I felt unstoppable. The world will reward you for chasing its carrots, but only your spirit will reward you for chasing your truth. That's where intrinsic motivation lies. That's the fire nobody sees, but everybody feels when you walk in the room. Extrinsic motivation, that's the applause, the money, the Instagram likes. Hey, let's be real, those things feel good. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you like I don't like a standing ovation. But if that's the only gas in your tank, you go and run out. And worse, when they stop clapping, you go and stop believing. See, the applause can't come first. The belief has to. There's this moment in your life where you gotta decide, am I running on rewards or running on reasons? And that decision that changes everything. It changes your work ethic. It changes your relationships. It changes your inner peace. Because when you work from the inside out, you're untouchable. That's the power of emotional intelligence. That's real self-improvement. That's when inspiration becomes a lifestyle, not just a weekend buzzword. Now let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting the house, the car, the lifestyle. Want what you want, but don't let those things own you. Own yourself, because if your motivation is only external, you're always negotiating with the world. But when it's internal, you're in full control. That's where real power lies, in the silence, in the discipline, in the reasons nobody sees. And here's something you won't hear often, but you need both. You need that outside push sometimes, and you need that inside burn always. Life is a balance between using what's out there and honoring what's in here. The Stoics talked about it. Every great thinker, every grounded souls, whether it was through Stoicism, quotes, were just lived wisdom. They all knew motivation without clarity is chaos. So let me ask you, are you chasing rewards or are you honoring your reasons? Because the rest of this video, I'm gonna break it all down. I'm not just gonna hit you with definitions. I'm gonna show you how to live this, how to recognize what's driving you and how to change the engine if you need to. And trust me, there's one mindset shift in here that changed my entire career. You don't wanna miss it. I wanna tell you something that took me years to figure out. Most people think motivation is this big explosive thing. Like one speech is supposed to wake you up forever. But let me tell you the truth, it's not the fire. It's the fuel. Fire burns out if there's nothing underneath feeding it. That's why you get hype after watching a motivational video. Then 2 days later, you're back in the same routine. You felt the fire, but you didn't refill your tank. Now listen, this is important. Intrinsic motivation is the kind of fuel that don't run out because it comes from inside you. It's born from your values, your beliefs, your vision of the person you're trying to become. It doesn't need a crowd. It doesn't need a deadline. It just is. That's why people with strong intrinsic motivation wake up early even when nobody's watching. They keep going even when they're tired. They're not chasing praise. They're chasing purpose. Now I get it. Purpose sounds like one of those fluffy words that people throw around in coffee shops. But purpose is practical, man. Purpose gives pain a reason. If you've got no reason to suffer, you'll avoid growth. You'll run from resistance. But if you do have a reason, like you're trying to build a legacy or break a generational curse, or just be a better version of yourself for your kids, then every setback becomes fuel. Every no becomes direction. Every obstacle becomes your teacher. That's why I had to get real with myself. I used to think the goal was to win awards, be number one, get the big roles. And I did. I hit those marks. But it wasn't until I started asking why I wanted those things that I actually felt fulfilled. I didn't want the award. I wanted to feel like I mattered. I didn't want to be number one. I wanted to prove I could climb from nothing. That realization, that was emotional intelligence. That was growth. That was real self-improvement. And that brings us to extrinsic motivation. Don't get me wrong, it's not the enemy. It's not bad. It's just incomplete. If intrinsic motivation is your compass, extrinsic motivation is the map. It shows you the terrain. It gives you a route. Like, maybe you want that promotion. Maybe you want to earn enough money to move your family somewhere better. Those are external goals, and they're valid. They matter. But what happens when you don't hit that goal? If you're only motivated by the goal, the failure will break you. But if you're motivated by the growth, the failure will build you. That's why we see people with all the resources in the world, and they still feel empty. They got the map, but no compass. They got the destination, but no direction. That's what happens when you let the world define your worth. And trust me, the world changes its mind every day. 1 minute they love you, next minute you're canceled. 1 minute they're clapping, next minute they're gone. If you build your self-worth on that applause, you're building your house on sand. Let me tell you something from experience. There was a time in my life when I was chasing every win like it was the last one. I had this fear, this deep fear, that if I slowed down, if I stopped grinding, the world would forget me. That fear drove me. That's extrinsic motivation at its loudest. But it was also a trap, because no matter how hard I worked, I couldn't outrun that emptiness. And it wasn't until I stopped and asked myself, what do I value more, peace or performance? And I finally started healing. See, peace don't come from having everything. It comes from knowing what truly matters to you. It comes from alignment. That's where stoicism hits hard. It's not about never feeling. It's about not letting your feelings control you. Stoicism quotes like you have power over your mind, not outside events, man. That ain't just philosophy, that's survival. Especially in a world that's always trying to tell you who you should be. So how do you build that kind of motivation? You gotta get quiet. You gotta sit with yourself long enough to separate your voice from the noise. You gotta ask hard questions like, what would I chase if no one ever clapped for me? What would I do if no one ever posted about it? That's how you find your truth. That's how you lock in. And once you've got that internal clarity, use the external stuff to sharpen it, not to define it. That's the balance. That's the harmony. You use the money, the recognition, the deadlines, but they don't own you. They serve you because now you are the engine. That's where inspiration becomes something deeper, not a spark, a lifestyle, an energy, a frequency. Now we're just getting warmed up because in the next part, we're going to talk about what happens when your motivations conflict, when your desire for validation fights your need for peace. I'm going to show you how to choose the right battle and how to win it. Here's what nobody tells you sometimes. Your own motivations will start fighting each other. You ever felt that? Like you want to stay grounded, be at peace, follow your heart, but then you also want the recognition, the promotion, the status. It's like there's two versions of you in the same body. One wants simplicity and truth. The other one, he wants the trophy. Let me break it down. Intrinsic motivation says, do what's meaningful. Extrinsic motivation says, do what's impressive. And sometimes those two overlap, but other times, man, they clash. I remember back when I had to choose between a movie role that would have looked amazing on paper, massive budget, guaranteed buzz, but my gut told me it wasn't the one. It didn't feel aligned with who I was becoming. And that moment, that was one of the hardest in my career because it wasn't about skill. It was about values. That's the real test. You see, your motivations reveal your values. When you're constantly chasing things outside of you, ask yourself, what am I trying to prove? A lot of us are still chasing approval we didn't get as kids. Still trying to silence the doubt that someone planted in us a long time ago. And that's okay. That's part of the human experience. But you can't let that shadow drive the car. You gotta shine a light on it. That's the work. That's where emotional intelligence comes in. The ability to recognize your emotional triggers without being ruled by them. Now here's the truth, they never fully disappear. That desire to impress, that itch to be seen, that little voice saying, are you good enough yet? But you can learn to manage it. That's what anger management really is too. Not suppressing emotion, but channeling it, using it. Stoicism isn't about becoming a robot. It's about knowing when to pause before you respond. And in life, your response is everything. Your response is your power. I had to learn that just because something makes me feel important doesn't mean it's right for me. You can climb a ladder fast, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. That's why you gotta slow down sometime, reflect, realign. Because the cost of chasing the wrong motivation isn't just burnout, it's regret. And regret, man, that's the heaviest baggage there is. That's the stuff that keeps you up at night. Now, I know some of y'all are out here grinding hard. You're working 2 jobs, building a business, raising a family, doing everything you can to create a better life. And you might be thinking, well, I have to focus on the external. I need those rewards. And I get that. Survival is real. Responsibility is real. But here's the thing, you can still stay rooted in your why. Even while you chase the what, you can still carry your internal compass, even if the world hands you a different map every day. And that's the key right there. Balance, harmony. You gotta be the kind of person who knows how to grind and rest, who knows how to chase goals and guard their peace, who can be ambitious without being anxious. That's mastery. That's what real success looks like, not just achievement, but alignment. That's where optimism becomes your default, not because everything is perfect, but because you trust yourself to handle whatever comes. Now let's talk practicality. How do you build intrinsic motivation in a world that constantly rewards the external? You start by asking better questions. Not how can I get more, but why do I want more? Not how can I win, but what does winning even mean to me? You redefine success. You detach from the scoreboard. You stop measuring your life in likes and start measuring it in integrity. One thing I do that changed everything from a write down my whys. When I'm in a good headspace, when I'm centered, I write a letter to myself. A reminder, because I know there's gonna be days I forget, days I get lost in the noise. So I anchor myself to truth in advance. That's what I mean when I say self-improvement ain't about fixing what's broken, it's about strengthening what's already strong inside you. And when those moments come, when you're tempted to prove something to people who don't even care, read that letter. Remember your why. Remind yourself that chasing peace is more valuable than chasing applause. Remember that the loudest voice in the room is rarely the wisest, and that you don't need to be seen to be significant. We're not done yet. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to spot the hidden signs of misplaced motivation, how to tell when your drive is helping you and when it's hurting you. This next part is where everything starts to click. You don't want to miss that. Here's something that took me a long time to realize. Sometimes we think we're motivated for the right reasons, but deep down, we're being pulled by something that's not aligned with who we really are. And the scary part, we don't even notice it. You see, misplaced motivation doesn't show up wearing a red flag. It shows up dressed like ambition. It looks like hustle. It talks like success, but it feels heavy. And you know what I mean by heavy, right? That constant pressure in your chest. That restlessness that follows you even after you win. That sense that no matter what you achieve, it's not enough. That's a clue. That's your inner self waving a flag saying, hey, we're off track. Let me give you a real-world example. There was a time when I thought if I just worked harder than everybody else, I'd finally feel whole. I believed that if I could be the best actor, the best performer, the top of every list, then I'd be untouchable. But what I didn't realize was that I was building a tower without a foundation. All that energy, all that fire, it was coming from fear. Not inspiration. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being average, fear of not being enough, and fear is a short-term motivator. It'll get you moving fast, but it won't keep you grounded. You'll hit the goal, but you won't enjoy it. You'll cross the finish line, but you'll feel more lost than ever. That's the trap of extrinsic motivation when it's disconnected from your core. So how do you know when your motivation is misplaced? Let me give you some sign. First, you feel exhausted even when you're winning. You hit your milestones, but they don't satisfy you. Second, you start comparing yourself constantly, your timeline, your achievements, even your happiness. That comparison becomes your compass. Third, you need constant validation. You feel empty when no one's watching, when no one's clapping. That's not drive. That's dependency. But here's the good news. Once you recognize it, you can redirect it. You can take all that energy and plug it into something deeper, something more lasting. That's what self-improvement really means. It's not about working harder. It's about working from a place of wholeness, from clarity, from self-awareness. That's emotional intelligence at work, knowing why you move, not just how. I started shifting my motivation by asking one question every morning. What would this look like if it came from love instead of fear? That one question changed how I approached my work, my relationships, my health, everything. Because fear pushes you to prove something. Love pulls you to express something. And when you create, move, or grow from that space, man, that's where the magic lives. Now, I'm not saying let go of all external goals. I'm saying learn to interpret them differently. Use them as tools, not trophies. Let them shape your discipline, not your identity. And this is where Stoicism comes back into play. It reminds us that we can't control everything, but we can control our perception. That's why it looks like it's not things that upset us, but our judgment of them hits so hard, because it puts the power back in our hands. You can be inspired without being addicted to approval. You can be driven without being drained. That's a whole new level of motivation most people never even touch, because it requires you to slow down. And that's hard in a culture that praises speed over direction. But real transformation, that doesn't come from rushing. It comes from intention, from stillness, from courage. And once you make that shift, once you start building from the inside out, you become unshakable. Because now your worth isn't up for debate. It's not tied to likes or awards or someone else's opinion. It's rooted in truth. It's rooted in values. That's when optimism becomes natural. Because even when life gets dark, you've got your own light to follow. And listen, I know some people might still be stuck in that old mindset. Hustle harder. Push more. Never sleep. But I'm telling you, if you keep building your life around outside validation, one day you'll look in the mirror and not recognize who you became to get there. We're all in this together, and that's why the next part is going to matter even more. We're going to break down how to align your motivation with your lifestyle so you're not just moving, you're moving in the right direction. It's time to put this into action. Let's talk about alignment. That's the word nobody used back in the day, but it's the secret behind every lasting success story. It's not just about working hard, it's about making sure the work matches your heart. And I learned this the hard way. Trust me, it was a time when I had the awards, the spotlight, the numbers, all that external proof that I'd made it. But deep down, something was still unsettled. I was checking every box, but feeling emptier with each check. Because when your goals don't align with your spirit, they drain you instead of feeding you. That's the cost of living only for the outside. Now look, I'm not knocking ambition. I'm not saying walk away from your dreams. I'm saying you gotta ask yourself, are my dreams even mine? Or were they handed to me by someone else? A parent, a teacher, society, or even your past pain. Because sometimes we mistake survival patterns for purpose. We start chasing things that once protected us, but now just keep us stuck. That's when the real work begins rewriting the script. You stop performing and you start living. You stop chasing applause and you start chasing truth. That's when intrinsic motivation starts to bloom. When your actions reflect your values, not your fears. That's real self-improvement. That's how you build a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Now let's get practical with it. You want to align your life? Start here. 1, write down what matters to you. Not what's trending, not what people praise you. Your core values. And maybe it's integrity. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's freedom. When you write it down, it becomes real. And when life gets noisy, you've got a map to return to. To audit your goals, take a hard look at them. Do they reflect your values? Or are they just ego in disguise? Are you trying to impress or express? You'll know the difference by how you feel chasing them. Fulfillment feels like peace. Performance feels like pressure. To redesign your days to reflect your why. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Build habits that keep your fire lit. Wake up and feed your souls before you feed the world. That could be reading, prayer, meditation, exercise, whatever grounds you. Your morning is your foundation. 4, protect your energy. Some of the most dangerous motivations come from the people we surround ourselves with. If everyone around you values status over substance, your compass is going to get twisted. Choose people who challenge your growth, not just your hustle. That's where emotional intelligence comes in. You start to notice the subtle shifts, the influence, the pressure, and instead of reacting, you respond. You take control. Now, I know this ain't always easy, especially when you've spent years building a version of yourself based on what others wanted from you. It takes courage to pause and say, wait, who am I really doing this for? But I promise you, once you start living in alignment, life gets lighter. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to prove anything. You're just being you. And that's the most powerful state to operate from. Think about the people you truly admire, not just for what they've accomplished, but for how they move through the world. You know what they've got? Alignment. Their success isn't random. It's not luck. It's the result of showing up with intention. Day after year after year. And most of the time, they don't even need to talk loud. Their presence speaks for them. That's the level we're trying to reach, not just successful at center. Not just impressive, but inspired. Because when you live from that space, people feel it. It's magnetic. It's real. You don't need to shout when your energy speaks truth. And here's a little bonus insight. When you operate from alignment, setbacks don't shake you the same way because you're not chasing someone else's path. You're walking your own. You're not trying to prove worth. You're expressing purpose. And that's where peace lives. That's where motivation stops being a struggle and starts becoming your natural rhythm. It can be both humble and hungry. You can be grounded and still reaching. That's the beauty of living on purpose. You're not driven by fear. You're led by vision. You wake up excited not because you're trying to win, but because you're finally becoming. And in the next part, I'm going to walk you through something even more powerful, how to keep your motivation alive when life gets hard. Because let's be real, no matter how aligned you are, storms still come. Doubt still knocks. And if you're not rooted, you'll get pulled off course again. But if you stay with me, you're going to learn how to rise not just once, but every time. Let's keep going. All right, now that we've talked about alignment, let's talk about the test. Because let's keep it 100. It's one thing to feel motivated when everything's going your way. But what about when life starts throwing punches? What happens to your motivation when your plan gets wrecked? When the people you thought would support you disappear? When the results don't show line? This right here is where most people give up. And not because they're weak, but because they never learned how to stay grounded in their why when their world shakes. They had the motivation, but not the system. The purpose, but not the practice. That's where consistency comes in. That's where habits outperform hype. See, the truth is, motivation is not a feeling. It's a system you build. Because feelings fade. Feelings shift. But systems save you when your feelings lie to you. When your mind says quit. When your emotions say, this isn't worth it. Your system reminds you, keep going. This is who we are now. That's why I started building discipline like I was stacking bricks. One brick a day. That's it. I stopped trying to feel motivated and I started focusing on showing up. No matter what. Because showing up is where the real transformation happens. Motivation might start the engine, but discipline keeps the car on the road. Let me tell you something about life, it will humble you. You can be at your highest peak 1 month and in the valley the next. It's not about avoiding the fall. It's about having the emotional intelligence to get back up with clarity. With purpose. You want to know one of the greatest stoicism quotes I ever heard? You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That hit me deep because most people are wasting their power trying to control things that were never theirs to control. The weather, the economy, what people say, what people think, but You've got a choice over how you respond, over what story you tell yourself. And that determines whether your fire burns out or burns brighter. So how do you keep going when you're tired, frustrated, or feeling lost? You reconnect with your vision. You remind yourself what this is all for. Not for likes, not for trophies, but for your evolution. For becoming the version of you that your future self is counting on. And here's where inspiration comes in. Look around at people who've endured, who've even knocked down, but still got up swinging. Not celebrities, not perfect folks. I'm talking about real people who kept choosing purpose over pressure, who kept walking when nobody was clapping. That's where the power is. You want to be great? Start by being consistent. Be loyal to your growth. Show up even when no one's watching. Because you're not performing for the crowd anymore, you're building something sacred. You're creating a life, not a moment. Let's talk practical again. What can you do when you feel your motivation slipping? One, stop, breathe, and journal. Get quiet and ask yourself, where is this resistance coming from? Is it fear, fatigue, lack of direction? When you name it, you can tame it. To lean into micro wins. Don't chase giant leaps every day. Stack small wins. Wake up earlier. Hydrate. Move your body. Read one page. These small victories create momentum, and momentum beats motivation every time. 3. Surround yourself with grounded energy. If you hang with people who quit on themselves, you'll start doing the same. But if you lock in with folks who are committed to growing, it gets contagious. Even in silence, their presence lifts you. 4. Remind yourself, this is about becoming, not arriving. There's no finish line in this game. There's just levels, and every level requires a deeper version of you. So, if the old tools stop working, don't panic. Evolve your toolkit. Sometimes that toolkit means learning anger management when frustration builds. Sometimes it means practicing silence when emotions rise. Other times, it's learning to say no without guilt or yes to something that scares you. That's growth. That's mastery. And every time you choose growth over comfort, your intrinsic motivation gets stronger. That's the real you stepping up. The one that doesn't fold when things get hard. The one that adapts, grows, and rives. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Now, I'm not saying the storm won't shake you. I'm saying it won't break you. Not if you've done the inner work. Not if you've been stacking bricks. And the deeper your foundation, the more pressure you can handle without cracking. This is where your life shifts. When you stop waiting to feel good to take action, and you start taking action to feel good. That's the turning point. That's where real motivation becomes a state of being, not a moment of hype. And in the next part, I'm about to walk you through how you can inspire others, not just by what you say, but by how you live. Because you weren't just built to survive this world. You were built to light it up. Let's take this deeper. All right, you've been doing the work, digging deep, realigning, rebuilding. And now it's time to talk about something powerful. Not just what your growth does for you, but what it does through you. Because let me tell you something, people are watching. Even when you don't notice. Even when you think nobody sees your grind, your healing, your self-improvement, someone does. Your evolution, it's contagious. You ever been around somebody who's just locked in, not flashy, not loud, but focused, grounded, confident in a quiet way? That energy doesn't scream, it peaks in silence. That's what real inspiration looks like. It's not about being perfect. It's about being authentic. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask better questions. See, people are starving for realness. In a world full of curated lives and highlight reels, authenticity is the most magnetic thing you can carry. And when you walk in your purpose, when you operate from intrinsic motivation instead of external validation, people feel that. And they start to question their own limits. That's the ripple effect of true growth. And don't think you need a platform to make impact. Your family is your platform. Your coworkers are your audience. Your kids, your friends, your own reflection in the mirror. That's where legacy starts, not in the applause, but in the influence. Let me get personal for a second. There was a season in my life when I thought I had to be the man. Always right. Always strong. Always performing. And what I didn't realize was that people around me didn't need me to be perfect. They needed me to be present, to be real. That's when I learned the difference between image and impact. One fades fast, the other lives forever. So how do you move from motivation to influence? How do you use your journey to light up somebody else's? Start by living it, not preaching it. Your consistency will say more than any quote ever could. You waking up early even when nobody's watching, that inspires. You apologizing when you mess up, that builds trust. You sticking to your boundaries and managing your emotions with emotional intelligence. That teaches. Next, share your story, not your glory. People connect with your struggles way more than your victories. Talk about the moments you almost gave up, the mistakes you made, the lies you believed, and how you found the truth. That's how you help people see that change is possible for them too. And most of all, be the proof. You don't have to convince anyone when your life shows the results, when your energy shifts, when your peace becomes your priority, when your purpose starts shining through your presence. People will notice. And look, let me be real, some people won't like the new you. Growth can be threatening to folks who stayed comfortable. Your light will trigger their shadows. But don't dim it to make them feel safe. Shine anyway. Be the mirror that reminds them who they could be if they chose growth over comfort. Now let's bring this back to intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, because this is where it all connects. When your motivation is extrinsic, your impact fades when the crowd stops clapping. But when it's intrinsic, you become unshakable. You don't need likes to lead. You don't need validation to show up. You're driven by purpose, not pressure. And that kind of energy that's unstoppable. You want to build a legacy? Start by becoming someone your younger self would admire. Start by becoming someone your future self will thank you for. That's the highest kind of motivation, evolution, motivation. You grow so that others know they can too. You shine so they know it's safe to step out of the dark. And don't underestimate this next point. Inspiration doesn't always look like a viral video or a standing ovation. Sometimes it looks like your child picking up a book because they saw you reading. It looks like a friend going to therapy because you had the courage to heal. It looks like a coworker choosing peace because they saw you manage your anger instead of explode. That's legacy. That's leadership. And I need you to hear this. You are enough right now to start making that impact. Not when you lose the weight, and not when you get the title, not when you figure it all out. Right now, with your flaws, with your lessons, with your light, let people watch you become. Let them witness your transformation. Because when they see you get up one more time, when they see you protect your optimism, hold your peace, and keep moving with grace, it's motivation in motion. That's how the world changes, one inspired person at a time. Now, in the final part coming next, we're gonna tie it all together. All of it, the vision, the pain, the purpose, and we're gonna give you a call to action so simple, so powerful, that if you follow it, your life will never be the same. Stay with me. This is the moment you've been building toward. So here we are. After all that exploration, after diving into the depths of what truly drives us, this is the moment of clarity. The part where everything clicks. You came in wanting to know what is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. But what you're really walking away with is understanding who you are becoming and why. Let's slow it down for a second. Take a breath. You made it through all this because you care. Because something deep inside of you is calling for more. You're not just interested in a motivational video. You're hungry for transformation. And that's what this has all been about. See, intrinsic motivation, that's your soul's talking. That's the part of you that's not chasing approval, not trying to impress, just trying to grow. It's the fire that says, I want to master this, not to prove anything to anybody else, but because it matters to me. That's what makes the difference between people who keep going and people who burn out. And extrinsic motivation, it's real. It's useful. We all like the recognition. We all feel a spark when someone claps or gives us that nod of approval. But here's the truth, if you depend on it, you'll lose your way. because the claps fade, the spotlight moves, and the world will always ask you to be someone else unless you decide who you are. That's why it's not about choosing one over the other, it's about knowing when to listen to which voice. You need the drive of extrinsic goals, sometimes to hit that milestone, to feel that fire. But you live from the fuel of the intrinsic. That's what keeps you steady. That's what keeps you free. Let me ask you something personal now. Quietly, honestly, what are you doing right now that aligns with who you want to be? Not what looks good on a resume, not what gets likes, not what your family expects. I mean you. What fuels your spirit? What gives you peace even when it's hard? Because if your days are filled with things that don't feed your souls, you're not living, you're performing. And you weren't born to perform, you were born to become. Damn, let that sink in. You were born to become. Become what? Whatever lights you up, whatever honors your values, whatever leaves the world better because you existed in it. So here's what I want to leave you with. You've got power. Feel power. Not the kind someone hands you, but the kind you discover when no one's watching. The kind that whispers when fear gets loud. The kind that says you got this, even when the evidence says otherwise. And that power, it grows every time you choose. Self-improvement over stagnation, emotional intelligence over reaction, optimism over bitterness, stoicism over chaos, purpose over performance, real impact over surface attention. That's not just success. That's freedom. So stop waiting on permission. Stop waiting on the right moment. You are the moment. You are the example somebody else is waiting to see. I'm telling you, when I stopped chasing what looked like success and started chasing what felt like alignment, everything changed. I started loving the process, started loving myself more, started seeing how my peace was the most powerful tool I had. That's when everything clicked. Now it's your turn. This ain't the end of the journey. This is the launch point. From today on, you lead with intention. You listen to your souls more than the noise. You let both kinds of motivation serve you, but you never let them control you. And most of all, you give yourself permission to evolve in real time. To love your past, but not live in it. To honor your future by showing up fully in your present. Let's say this one more time. What is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation? It's the story of your why. One shaped from the inside. One supported from the outside. But the author, that's you. So write your chapter boldly. Speak your truth. Live loud, but stay grounded. And when doubt shows up in it, will remind yourself you are enough. You are becoming, and you are the proof that growth is possible. Now, if this message hit you, if something shifted in you today, don't just let it fade. Do something with it. Act on it. Reflect on it. And you want more content like this, you already know what to do. We are Wisdom Recorder, your knowledge source. Like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs it. Let's keep building, keep growing, and keep becoming. Because the world doesn't just need more noise. It needs more truth. And that starts with you.